Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe, and this week, forgive me, again, it's just gonna be me talking to you. It's still, John is resting up after his accident. He, again, if you missed the last episode, he is okay, he is uninjured, thankfully dodged all of the broken bones and stuff that could be really, really seriously wrong, but still really roughed up, so he's taking a little more time off to try to get together and, feel better. And in the meantime, I'm just going to be doing some episodes solo to keep things coming out so y'all aren't missing uploads. And that means we get to talk about just the things that are kind of in my noodle at any given time, instead of having to worry about things like algorithm viability or how much the general audience will click on it. I mean, who cares about click-through rate? It doesn't matter at all. Instead, I think I'm just going to talk about a topic that's been kind of on my brain, given the state of the community recently, and that is the idea of expectations, additions, and wargaming. As many of you probably know, if you're watching this channel, you're probably at least vaguely aware of it existing. Age of Sigmar is made by Games Workshop. They make, all the Warhammer stuff, the 40k, the Kill Team, the Necromunda, things like that. They're the biggest wargaming company in the world, and certainly take up a lot of the community sentiment. And every now and then their games go through whole new editions. And recently, Age of Sigmar, we've talked about it on the podcast a little bit, kind of leading up to it, but Age of Sigmar has had their edition rollover. They've gone from 3rd edition into 4th edition. And with that, it has been a retooling of the entire game system. Every rule got deleted and rewritten. Every unit got deleted and rewritten. Everything got rebalanced, again, down to nothing and rewritten, and same for all the points. They got retooled across the board, totally deleted and rewritten. Everything is a brand new slate. The interactions have changed, the point levels have changed, the viability of what rules are really desirable has changed, and overall, it's quite startling. John and I recently, I went down to visit him and see how he was doing in person rather than just calling one another. And because he was bummed he missed the 4th edition opener weekend. So I thought, if he can't go to the shop where we were going to play 4th edition, that's cool. I'll just bring 4th edition to my bud. So loaded up the car, a couple of armies, and went down there. And there were some times we had to have someone help move around minis for him. But we got our 4th edition games in. We got in 2 of them. And the thing that really struck me after we played our 2 4th edition games is, wow, this is different. Things that in the previous edition that may have felt really underwhelming there feel much stronger here. And things that I wouldn't have really thought to consider too heavily in terms of game mechanics made more of a difference than we expected. And with that in mind, it sort of kicked around in my head that, man, if I didn't come into this with the right mindset, I could have a pretty bad time. And it's about that time that general discussion in the community started to kick off. All of the indexes, the rules were released in PDFs for free. And people started to read their PDFs. Some of people, before they even read the general rules, and opinions started to fly. As you would imagine, a lot of people were going, wow, Unit X is more more expensive than it used to be, but it got nerfed. Why, Games Workshop? Why do you hate my favorite mini? Without at all realizing that stuff across the board got more expensive. And maybe that unit that they think got nerfed, so to speak, actually got a very tiny increase when the rest of the general pack got a bigger increase, which would actually be a buff for it. Or maybe it's like, its stats are different than they used to be, but maybe because the whole game was rebalanced, everything no longer is the same value. Whereas old anchor points just don't hold up in this new edition. And I think it's a topic that's worth talking about. I think it happens to us rather often in wargames. Just in general, I think in wargaming, when you play these games a lot, we kind of can't help to build expectations with the games that we play, especially the ones we play a lot, that we're the most passionate about. If anything, I think it's unavoidable because it's part of what makes you kind of good at the game over time, is just your knowledge and experience, having played this game so many times against so many different types of opponents and so many different types of armies. And as you sort of build up your roster of experience, you get your reps in, you get your games in, you start to learn more about what to expect from an opponent, what to play, how it might roll out. And as that happens, you can anticipate it better. And I think that is a lot of where our skill comes from, which is wonderful. That really is. To be able to get your game knowledge down and anticipate opponents, even tricky ones, can really be a moment where you realize, like, oh, there's a bait. I see a bait there. They're putting forward a little dangly unit. You know, me of 5 years ago would have charged that thing, but me of now realizes I don't have to touch it at all. I'm just going to go get the objectives. Stuff like that. It's good for us. It's, you know, it's human nature. Everything is sort of built on what came before, and we use that as a way to step forward. However, I do think at times, if you're not careful, it could be a bit of a double-edged sword. And largely for me, after seeing some responses to the rules and playing my own game, where I realize just how big some of these changes could be, that it might be worth having an episode to just talk to folks and warn people that this happens. When out and about and playing games, I think it is always worth questioning your experience and whether it is generally as valuable as you think it is. For example, if you think your particular army is really, really terrible or really, really, really strong, or the opposite, you know, you're undefeated in your group or you are totally defeated in your group, you're getting stomped or you're the one doing stomping, maybe that's an experience, maybe those experiences are absolutely true for you. However, I think in general, it is worth asking yourself whether those things are representative. Are you in a small gaming pool? Maybe you have opponents who don't really know the game very well or don't really care to. Maybe you're fighting armies that are a terrible matchup for you, depending on your game system and how they balance stuff. Maybe your friends just don't have the right units for their army to play well. That can skew your game results. You know, in this instance, it's very easy to very quickly see, oh man, maybe my army isn't as good as I thought. If I get against a wider array of opponents who were more prepared, maybe I would have a rougher time. Or vice versa. I went against opponents who weren't so top tier, cutting edge competitive, I would probably do better. And I think that's also very, very true with your experience in terms of new editions. I think maybe that is the most appropriate time when you should be questioning whether or not your experience is valid. Lord knows I have been. Because I feel like if you don't, there are some inherent dangers. One, mechanically speaking, I do think if you expect a certain type of play, or certain level of play, or certain style of play, and you go into a new edition blind, you just kind of clinging on to your old tactics, you're expecting your opponents to do the same, in a game system that has fundamentally changed in some way, there's a good chance you might get mollywopped by some stuff you didn't know was in the game. An example, in Age of Sigmar 4th edition, one of the new things that was put into the game is an ability called Countercharge. You don't need to know how Age of Sigmar works to understand why this is important, but the thing is that for a certain amount of point spend, command points, you can use a really strong ability on your opponent's turn, allowing your own units to charge your opponent in their turn. which is totally new. That has never existed in a Warhammer game in the entire time I've been playing them. Normally, Warhammer is very segmented in how turns play out. It is, I go, I do everything. You go, you do everything. And then back and forth until we're all the way through the turn sequence. But with this ability, you, after my charge phase is done, can stop the charge phase and make one yourself. And if you don't know that's coming, that could catch you out just in the terms of, oh, I didn't expect you to jump on top of my unit. That's going to take some damage. That's a little rough. But secondarily, what it can do now is that it can allow your opponent to score points or to deny you scoring points. For example, maybe your objective was to get units in the middle of the battlefield without enemies nearby. So you moved up, you got ready, you know it's your turn, you end your movement phase, you're not going to make your charges. Cool, I'm going to score my points guaranteed. Not knowing that your opponent, in just a few seconds, will then say, oh yeah, I'm going to countercharge. They've saved their command points specifically to do this thing. And now they're going to dive into the middle, and even if they don't hurt your unit, you're not going to get your points. Now, all of a sudden, your expectations of old editions has sort of hampered your current progress in the game. And I think while that is important to a lot of people, especially if you're a more outcome-oriented person or you're a more competitive-minded person, it could be a good way for you to see if you're going to put yourself into a trap when you start learning a new edition. But I think even worse, and the one you want to avoid the most, the one I want to caution you to avoid the most, is if you don't let go of sort of your anchors for old editions, if you don't just accept that this thing is going to be different than how you knew it, and that you maybe need to take a lot of your previous knowledge and examine it and toss it out, if you don't try to cut those useless pieces out and relearn stuff and take this as an opportunity, it could not only hamper your win rate, it could hamper your enjoyment of the game. There is an idea in game design where essentially players anchor expectations off of your rules, right? If I write something and then players use it a lot, they are going to get used to that thing I wrote, whatever that first thing was, as their baseline. It is what they're going to compare everything else to that I ever write. That rule. It doesn't matter how many options I give them to replace it. Before they take whatever I write to offer a replacement option, they are going to take it and compare it to the first thing. And you will know immediately if you made a thing that was better or worse, because they will tell you. Why would you ever take option number 1 when option number 4 is obviously superior? Or why would I ever take 4 when 1 is still superior? Or this is too expensive compared to 1. Or this doesn't hit hard enough compared to 1. It's, as players, we're really, really good at finding those issues. Because we, again, compare pretty much everything to old rules. But when you do that on bad information, because all of that stuff is outdated, you are inevitably going to find that it doesn't work the same. And your mindset, if you aren't careful, will then turn that into frustration, potentially anger, discontent. It could truly dampen your hobby and the fun you're having playing games with your friends. And I don't want that for anybody. This is first and foremost for all of us, especially y'all here listening to me. This is a time for us to enjoy ourselves, to relax, and to meet people, and to try to blow off a little bit of steam before heading back into the grinder of work and family and school and, all the other responsibilities. And it would be a shame, just a crying shame, if somebody had to lose out on their fun for a good while simply because they didn't know that this was a risk, that they didn't know that some of their expectations needed to be examined or cut altogether. The win rate is one thing, but that's the one that matters the most. Don't be afraid to just throw it all out. Just admit that your old experiences doesn't matter. It might feel like you're kind of resetting or going behind, but I assure you, in a case of like a new edition, everyone is going behind. All their expectations are going out. So you're on a playing field with everyone that's pretty level. People are seeing it at the same time you are. Everyone's going to have brand new variables to look at. Everyone's going to have new toys to tinker with. Everyone's going to have new Legos to piece together. The question really just kind of comes down to whether you're going to acknowledge that or not. And I very much encourage you to do so. Because I think this is a thing that oftentimes can be prevented. Let's be honest, when we talk about some of the issues on the channel, right, that like wargamers run into, we try to get to the end of every episode that we write, and we want to give you a takeaway of what you can do to try to fix the thing. For example, I did the ludonarrative dissonance episode. At the end, there were a couple of things you could do to try to avoid that issue, but then you kind of get to the end of your rope, and there's not as much you can do. Same thing when we talk about armies getting deleted from games. We could give you a couple of things on how to go forward, but we can't really fix the core problem because we don't have it in our power to put the armies back. Or when there are hot button issues in the community and people respond angrily or with a lot of vitriol. We could give you some advice on how to disconnect and avoid it, but we can't really give you anything that fundamentally, at the core, can just negate the issue. It is a ever-present Sisyphean problem that we keep pushing to try to find some helpful bits in what is otherwise a fairly an ambiguous and unwinnable issue. This one, though, on the other hand, this is one of the very few topics in which we can avoid this one. Our expectations, our sort of preconceived notions are within our control. We get to choose what we internalize and what we hold on to and what stuff we can just throw out. This is one of the few times that you actually get that choice. The lion's share of the control is in your court, which is awesome. You may not be able to choose whether or not you like new rules, right? That's sort of down to preference and game and addition and stuff like that. But you can choose whether or not you're going to look at those rules with fresh eyes so that you can make as much as is possible, a new level baseline that isn't positively or negatively affected by old stuff. I feel like for most of us out here in Hobbyland, if we can take the time to do that, to ask ourselves if our expectations for these war games or these new rules or these new additions are worthwhile. And if not, why not start new ones? I think we'll just have more fun doing this. I've unfortunately watched it sort of tear people's fun apart needlessly. And y'all, I really don't want that to happen again. Because I'm going to be honest, John and I had a ball playing AOS 4th Edition. We played 2 games. It was my Ogres versus his Slaves to Darkness. And the first one was gonna be a blowout. I mean, just terrible. John's a nightmare man and decided that, for our first game where we want to get some good data for the new edition, Joe brought kind of a flexible all-comers list. I know what I'll do to get some representative data. I will skew into all cavalry. Just cavalry across the board. I want to be absolutely in my opponent's deployment zone, across the board, bottom of one. How amazing. and Varangard, pretty spicy. And I would have been trounced if not for John failing a 3-up charge because of his own avarice and using his reroll too early. Great game. We decided to re-rack. Game 2, he played Cruel Boys. I played my same Ogre thing to just, again, compare the list against something else that's not all Cav. And we had a blast. It was a bit of a blowout because, again, we didn't know exactly how we should be positioning, or how we should be giving priority, or what we should be trying to spend our time working towards. Because all of it's new. However, even though Ogre's charge good, Ogre punch good, Ogre crush face big, manly much, John still had fun. I still had fun. We had a really good time. But I can't help but question if we would have had just as much fun if we did not, before the game ever even started, tell ourselves, this is new. Start over. In 3.0, maybe a -1 for your opponent to hit doesn't matter a whole lot. But here, sure does. Or maybe in the last game, Battle Tactics were easy to score. Not here. You got to think about them more. I think it just set the stage for us to have fun, and I think it can, with a little bit of effort, set the stage for y'all to have fun too. And for y'all out there thinking, wow, did Joe just say he drove to his friend who had recently been in an accident and then beat him in Age of Sigmar mercilessly with ogres? Yes, I did. How else does your friend heal other than to be beaten by ogres? And in my defense, he almost blew the brakes off me turn 1, but alas, the avarice. But y'all, I really hope that you take the time to do this in your own hobby and let us know your results. Please feel free to share them in the comments, but also on Instagram. We're doing a big push over there. We're now actually doing posts and reels and the whole 9 yards. We're working really hard on it, adding a new member to the team, Amanda. So that's incredible, and I want to share that with y'all. So in addition to doing the like, the subscribe, the whole 9 yards, please go check out the Instagram and see if it's something for you. Hobby pictures and reels and faction stuff starting to go over there very soon. We'd appreciate it. And while John rests up, I will be continuing to work on new things to think about what we're going to talk about in the future. For now, that's been all of my opinions, Bonafide and Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all on the next one.